Hey, hi. I am out on a walk. It is 16 glorious degrees Celsius. I've got iced coffee. I've got new makeup. Princess type. I feel like this angle makes me look bald. Ugh. I recently replaced my phone. So up until now, I have had two sort of working phones, which was like Matthew's old phone, which was shattered to the point that it had like exposed wires, and my phone, which only worked with one cable to charge or to transfer videos. And so I couldn't use the audio that I bought. Profesh. And that meant that the audio quality in my videos was always a bit of a battle. So now I have a better camera in a phone that works with more data storage and audio, which is just truly a gift. I can't decide if filming like this makes me feel more or less cool. Less. But how can you be less than none, you know? In terms of like homestead-y kind of goals, I have a lot. I would really like chickens. I have incredibly complex feelings about eating eggs. I would really like to have chickens, I think. Yeah. I have heard that they're really good pets. And I guess that's mostly why I want them, but I would also like them because I like the idea of being able to provide more for ourselves in terms of food. Eating eggs is very complicated for me. I don't believe that there is any like ethical consumption, like truly ethical consumption under capitalism. But I also don't want to participate in a system that is as like violent as the egg industry. So even like raising chicks to be laying hens, I think there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Can I do this? I think that no small component of the moral objection to consuming animals or animal byproducts is this idea that the worst thing that we can do is die. In a Western, Protestant, white, capitalist mindset and social construction, death is the worst thing that could happen because we've commodified life in a way I'm certainly not advocating for killing. First of all, it's so beautiful. I guess I want to just say I don't think death is the worst thing. I don't. This literally started me trying to talk about homesteading projects. Now I'm talking about death as not being the worst thing. I'll use pretty much any excuse to talk about death. When I was 16, I was walking home from work and I had my headphones on and I was listening to to the Step Up soundtrack, which honestly is so good, and I got hit by a car. It hit me from behind and I flew, landing on the ground, never went unconscious, but immediately sort of went into shock because my body didn't see it coming. I didn't tense, I didn't anticipate it. I had music in and I was crossing in a crosswalk and didn't see anybody. After I got hit, I was lying on the ground screaming and bleeding from my head. And I laughed because I've just had so much therapy about this. The person who was driving the vehicle that hit me got out and came to talk to me and was absolutely obliterated, like could barely stand. So I got hit by a drunk driver, told the person to like leave me alone basically, and I walked half a block home. That person got back in their vehicle and hit a parked car and then went unconscious. So when I got home, I told my mother, who did not believe me, and I just said, look, I could have some really significant issues. I'm in shock. I got hit by a fucking car. Help. So she got in the car to drive me to the hospital, and then as we were leaving our place, that half block away where I got hit, there were a bunch of police cars and a fire truck and ambulances because the person who hit me had hit a parked car and was unconscious. So at that point, they took over, and I got sort of strapped into the board, like the body board, because they didn't know if I had a spinal injury because I was having trouble walking. All of this being said, I had no broken bones. I have permanent tissue damage and had a lot of years of therapy and physical therapy because it was such a traumatic experience. I, was 16 and I had my clothes cut off of me, and I had things inserted into me to see if I was internally bleeding, and it was very scary and bad. And the person who hit me lived on my street, lived about 7 houses away. Also, it fundamentally changed my life. I think prior to that point, I had no real sense of my own mortality, which is like really par for the course for teenagers. At 16, I had thought I died. I thought I died big time. And it was very acute and scary. It forced me to deal with my shit because I couldn't leave my house. I was pretty traumatized. It made me think more about life as this sort of incredible gift that I felt like I had this newfound and pretty significant relationship to dying because I thought I had. And I would say basically ever since then, it has been a really important piece of my life. A relationship to dying and death means that I think more consciously about how I live every day. I feel more grateful. I feel like before I was a little sponge and I didn't know that I was a sponge. And I was just moving in my spongy way through the world. And then I got hit by a car and I was confronted with death. And all of a sudden, I realized I was a sponge and I had all this capacity to soak up everything, to soak up life and to grow and expand, and that at every moment I could just be absorbing and sponging. The impermanency of my new sponge life was a really big gift to me, that I was conscious of my capacity to absorb and embrace all of what being alive and what being dead might feel like and might be like. I have a lot of issues with the term spiritual because it just feels sort of hokey pokey to me, although I know it's significant for lots of people. I'm not trying to shit on that. Just, I think coming from Mennonite roots, spiritual feels very like I don't know, like I have a hard time saying it without feeling like there's a level of mocking there, and that's just for me. I have moments of intense fear of not being anymore, and I also have moments where that feels really perfect and right, that I get to be this sponge, and for as long as I get to be this sponge, I will absorb and enjoy and saturate with all the living that I can. And then one day I won't be the sponge anymore. And I would rather have a delicious, spongy, absorby existence than feel like anything static, because I've lived sort of both sides of that. talking about death and dying feels incredibly liberating to me. I feel at peace thinking about how everyone that came before me lived and died, and I will be a part of that. And that's right in the world. That doesn't mean that I'm not at times very scared of dying, but it means that proximity to death and discussion of death and familiarity with death feels honest. And I'm sure as other folks who live sort of closer to the land, you see the cyclical nature of existence, right? I see how this was all snow like 3 weeks ago, and in 3 weeks it will be all greenery and all these beautiful ferns, and they will die. I am going to just sponge it all up. I'm going to feel the growth and the dying and the gray and the green, and that there's beauty in all of it, right? Last year when we moved here, I was just devastated by watching everything die in the winter. It was awful. And I think part of that was because I felt so much more sort of proximity to where I was. And part of it was that I hadn't yet experienced spring. It's so beautiful here. So I live on Lake Winnipeg, and basically I live on a prairie ocean. That's water. You can't even see the other side. It's a prairie ocean, baby. We are so distanced in a white, Eurocentric, colonial, capitalist space from death that I think it feels very foreign and terrifying. I don't want to have that relationship to death. I don't think it's a small thing, but I also think that there are ways to do it. Well, okay. Why do I want to make this about chickens so much? If I'm going to have chickens, I need to be prepared that I'm going to be the one that kills them if they get sick. The fear of that is pretty intense, but also, unfortunately, it sounds like especially with keeping chickens and keeping birds, it's pretty much guaranteed. There are elements of it that are guaranteed. Even if you do your absolute best, it is likely the animals in your care will need to die rather than stay and suffer. There is a greater injustice in sending them to a scary and foreign place to be killed by someone who doesn't love them and won't approach that necessarily the way that I would. I also think that the reason we live is because we die. If I'm going to have animals under my care, I want to know that I can be honest about that element, acknowledge my role in that. And as far as eating their eggs, I think that, first of all, eggs are not something I miss at all. I don't really have a desire to eat them. But I do see them as potentially being another way that I can provide food for Matthew and myself. And if there's a way to go about, this gull really has something to say. If there's a way to go about eating the eggs that does not cause harm to the chickens, and if there's a way to go about getting chickens that does not involve an incredibly harmful industry like the egg industry, then I probably will do it. I challenge white veganism, which I think sort of purports that the cruelest injustice we face is death. And there is tragedy in it, and there's beauty in it. And it feels like some of my work is to embrace both, and mourn both, and celebrate both, and grieve both, and live and sponge both. Chickens are maybe one way to be a part of that. Not that I'm like getting chickens to kill them, because that sounds pretty fucked. Do you like these vlog videos? I like them because I just get to be a personing, because I feel completely full up with gratitude that I get to be here. So I want to share it with you too. Then you should subscribe, and you should like this video, and you should comment, and you should love me, and hopefully I can figure out how to turn this around so you can see.